Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here, and now for week 2 of our Targetmaster Hero Month, we're going to take a look at a Decepticon warrior. We're looking this time at the 1987 version of Cyclonus. As stated, Cyclonus, like the others that will be featured this month, this version was put out in 1987. It's a remake of the original 1986 version. This version, however, would only be on the shelves throughout 1987, being discontinued in 1988. But unlike many of the other Targetmaster heroes, Cyclonus would get a replacement in his function with Squeeze Play. Now, taking a look at both of these versions of Cyclonus. This one stand a little straighter. That's better. I don't know if it's coming off very well on the camera or not, but one obvious difference between the two is in the shade of purple that the toys are made in. The 1986 version, as you can see, is in a rather light shade of purple, whereas the 87 Targetmaster is considerably darker in color. So that's one obvious thing to take notice of. One other thing to point out, though, as well, is to show off the ears on the toy. This is one of the original 1986 versions. You might not be able to easily tell here by the camera, but you can see that along here, the ears, supposedly, are painted in a blue color. This is a first edition 1986 version of Cyclonus. Supposedly ones would be released later that would go the same route here as the Targetmaster, and there would be no extra paint applications whatsoever. So, there's basically the differences between those two toys. Obviously, that upsets the newer version, caused him to pass out there. Let's get the old one out of the way here, and we'll take a better look at the new version of Cyclonus. The articulation for this toy is still the same. The arm can rotate at the shoulder, but it is a little inhibited by the wing. But if you do move the wing out, the arm can rotate all the way at the shoulder. It does have a hinge at the elbow that basically allows the arm to twist. Doesn't do a full, complete twist. It goes to the one side that way. The tail fin rubs against the wing. A little hard to get it around, and rotates about that far, so you can have the fist kind of straight out like this, so you can make him look like he's going to throw a punch. Does have a hinge at the elbow as well, so it does allow him to bring his arm up to a degree. So between it and the shoulder movement, you can get him to properly aim his gun. He also does have a joint at the hip. That does allow him to bend his legs up about so far. And while it's primarily used for transforming, you can bend him at the knee. And you can also bend him at the ankle. Of course, that hip, listen to that ratcheting on the hip. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful sound, folks. Okay, now let's get ready and transform Cyclonus. Of course, we start by removing his weapon, which we'll take a look at it here in a little bit. Then next, we're going to turn the figure around. I had these closed originally. They're supposed to be open, so that's why his legs were moving kind of funny. But now, you take these trap doors and you snap them closed. on his backside there. There we go, good and snug. And now we're going to take the nose cone here on his back, flip it up on top of his head, lock it into place. His arms we're going to rotate so that the fist is down beneath, and then shift the casing for his engines up and over. Basically rotate the fist up and have it touch at the elbow. Should reveal the engines. And of course, you're going to straighten the arms out and shift the shoulders downward a bit. You'll take his wings, fold them out, snap them into place on the sides. And now for his legs, fold the feet down. You're going to fold the legs up, bend him, nope, don't fold the leg, but fold the knee up. Bend the leg at the knee and fold it up so that it snaps into place on top of the leg. Like so. Then of course while you're down here, pulling on this little tab here that was on his chest, also bring out front landing gear. Adjust the camera downward a little bit. A little wonky here on his landings. That's better. That's better. Had the landing gear out too far. There's this Cyclonus in his vehicle mode. He's a space jet. Probably loosely inspired by the X-29 plane due to the inverted wings. And of course, like the original, he does still swoosh pretty good. But as an added feature, he also has a notch here just behind the cockpit that you can mount his Targetmaster partner. I believe that's Nightstick on there, and Nightstick becomes an extra gun for him to use in flight. But of course, in that position, Nightstick also basically becomes a turret, and he sits just high enough. Well, it looks kind of stupid here how high up he's sitting, but he does sit high enough that he has a full 360-degree view of the area around him, and as long as he can't lean forward in gun mode, then he will have almost no danger of shooting Cyclonus while in flight. So, certainly a bonus on that, but let's also compare him side by side. There's the original in plane mode. And more or less, again, same differences as before. It's probably more noticeable now that they're in plane mode that the 1986 one is in the lighter shade of purple, whereas the 1987 version here is in a darker shade, so that'll help you tell the two toys apart. But of course, also, the Targetmaster one will have this hole in the back just above the rub sign, which, as you will notice, is absent totally on the 1986 original. So, again, my fellow collectors, this is so you will be able to tell the difference should you find them at a flea market or toy show. We'll take a look here at Cyclonus' lone accessory, and it is his Targetmaster partner, Nightstick. Nightstick, of course, only has articulation at the hip, so you can basically bring his legs up like that. But it's basically to transform him As all you do is fold the legs up against his head, and now he's in gun mode. And something to probably pay attention to. I don't know if it's just for my sample or if it is with all versions of him. But you will want to be careful with this hip joint articulation. Mine here is pretty stiff and solid. So you'll want to take great care when folding it over, because as you can imagine, this plastic down here does tend to wear out very easily, and on a few of the other Targetmaster guys, it's also very thin, so it does stress wear and break very easily. So a lot of these large Targetmasters, if this is the way they convert, folding their legs up, you might want to keep an eye on that so you don't inadvertently break them. Other than that, that's all there is to him. Okay, before we get to some of the other comparisons and such, I do want to point out something. Since we're about to review the instructions have you fold in the tail fins that are on the engines when you transform him into the robot. So that leaves the fin pointing inward in at his body, but to do that, it also means that it keeps his hand at an angle, like this, since the fin sticking out back here gets in the way, and then his fist won't come on straight. Me, like most others, we tend to want to leave that fin sticking outward on the outside of the arm. It is pretty stiff on this model. We're trying to shift it so it's more like this one, so that way, there we go. If nothing else, his arms look straight, and it looks more natural. Then again, that's kind of up to you, your preference, of course, but just as an explanation, especially for any of you eagle-eyed viewers. Now we'll take a look at the instructions. Of course, this is the Targetmaster versions, but for quick comparison's sake, we're going to bring up the 86 original. For those collectors who do want a complete version of this toy, you know what to look for. Like with Blur that we showed last week, first difference is here at the top. With the trademarked slogan on the 86 version has more than meets the eye, whereas in 1987 they changed it to more, ellipses, much more than meets the eye. Then also you take a look at the color on the instructions. I mean, the obvious difference here is the gun as well, since that's the original gun, and this is the obviously much larger Targetmaster. But as you can see, they used some darker shades of purple here on the Targetmaster version, instead of just keeping it the consistent light purple. And then down here where it has his faction, the 1986 version lists him as Evil Decepticon, whereas the Targetmaster just goes with Decepticon. So something to keep in mind, folks, if you're looking for a loose set of these instructions. But basically, aside from the inclusion of a transforming gun, they're more or less the same. It shows there how to transform him, now how to add Nightstick as a weapon for the jet. And it does also remind you the wings are detachable. So that was something they did not change from the original. And of course, how to put on the stickers. And then at the end, the usual stuff. How to read the rub sign, save your robot points, and how to read your tech spec. Let's these instructions out of our way here. And then speaking of tech specs, like with all the others, we've got both of them here for a good comparison. Excuse me, eye allergies. Alright, the 1986 version, as you can see here, just has the Sunburst logo in the back, while the Targetmaster has the digital Sunburst. You can also see while they're standing at the same angle, they aren't exactly standing alike. This one, the 86 version, appears to be more standing on his feet, whereas the Targetmaster version looks more like he's leaning back. And other things you can easily notice is the larger font size, both in the titles and for his function, on the Targetmaster version versus what's on the original. So, let's put the original aside and let's take a look at the new one to see what's different. It's done up in purple to show he's a Decepticon, even lists him as one. It gives his name as Cyclonus, and his function is Saboteur. His motto is, "Compassion is the Autobot's downfall." All that's still the same from the original. An emotionless marauder whose single-minded purpose is to destroy the Autobots. Incapable of fear. Paired with Nightstick, a Nebulon master criminal who doubles as a blinding, corroding black beam gun. In space jet mode, has nuclear-powered turbine engines that allow him to cruise at Mach 2 in suborbital altitudes and achieve escape velocity for interstellar space travel. Well, we knew he was capable of spaceflight. Those of us that watched Transformers the movie knew he was capable of that. So that really doesn't tell us anything. So let's lay the decoder on and let's check out his stats. It gives his strength as 9 as well as his intelligence. His speed is 10. His endurance is 6. His rank is 7. His courage is also 10. His firepower is 5. And his skill is 6. But how does that compare to some of the stats on the original? Well, his strength and intelligence went up. His speed certainly went up. Endurance kind of went down. His rank also went down. So does that mean in Targetmaster mode he's no longer Galvatron's chief lieutenant? His courage also went up. Firepower naturally went down. But also strangely his skill went down. So is that to say that the pairing of the Targetmaster to him has not only increased some of his stats, but made him weaker and less efficient? Sound off on your thoughts in the comments down below. Now we get down to my thoughts. What do I think of Cyclonus, the Targetmaster version? Cyclonus is still one of the more popular characters. He always has been, he always will be. The sleek space jet mode just screams fascinating. And you give the fact that he also still held the rank of Chief Lieutenant and second in command of the Decepticons, following Shockwave's departure from the series. But even without that, he still would have been serving as the bodyguard to Galvatron, and that alone inspired a lot of fear in the other Decepticons, especially during the tenure that Galvatron was insane. As for the Targetmaster, it's a nice slight improvement over the original. I mean, the new paint job on him, it's not bad. It wasn't really necessary, but it does enhance his Decepticon look. So it does make him look a little more evil, but other than that, it really doesn't do much for him. The addition of the Targetmaster weapon, it's okay. I mean, it's not perfect because it does look silly, especially when it's mounted onto his jet. But in a tactical sense, it does kind of work, as it does give him a weapon that is capable of shooting at other attackers, since by then the Autobots were starting to amass a fairly decent air force. So that would give him some means of protection and another additional weapon to strafe the ground with as well. But still, the toy does manage to pull things off for the fans, and given his popularity, I think it's easy to say that Cyclonus is definitely a top-tier toy. And this one, yeah, it just barely makes it into the top tier. The changes that were done to it really don't benefit him that much. They don't really add too much. I think they lessen it a little bit, as the transforming gun feature, while in a tactical sense having a separate gunner does bring about some benefits to the Transformer, as in vehicle mode especially, that gives them somebody else to do the shooting, and the robot can function on the travels. But the size of the guns, due to the transforming gimmick, does tend to throw it off a little bit. So the large size of him really detracts from the appearance in the jet mode. But it is something that is easily overlooked when you consider it is Cyclonus, and he was one of the greatest warriors in the Decepticon army. I think he'd put up with having a slightly bulkier target on his backside. Probably more so, he'd deliberately see that the Nebulon would get shot off of him, and then he'd be rid of him. But for more on that, we'll listen to next week's review of Hot Rod, and you'll see more. We'll get more into the thought of losing the Targetmaster partner. At any rate, though, we're still going to list this version of Cyclonus as a top-tier toy. And that concludes my review of the Targetmaster version of Cyclonus. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up here on YouTube. Don't forget as well, hit that subscribe button down below and join up within our ranks. Please also consider sharing your thoughts about Cyclonus in the comments section down below. This is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.